You weren't born feeling unworthy. You were trained to be. What if I told you that your confidence was methodically turned down bit by bit until you internalized unworthiness and settled into an acceptable level of existence, a blurry, boxed in version of yourself? And that was no accident. It was a carefully orchestrated campaign to keep you small in a world that only thrives if it can continue to convince you that you are unworthy. It's all part of a plan, unknowingly carried out by its most devoted executors, your parents. A plan to keep you small, obedient, and under control. A plan we all now call patriarchy. When I was in my early 10s, it's funny to say that like that, I was like 12 or 13. We had just come back from a family reunion and I had a good time. I was a really social kid and always cracking jokes. I knew all the jokes. I was full of energy. For some reason, I loved being around people. And I was talking to everybody and all of that. And when we got home, my dad looked at me and said, you know that everybody was pointing at you thinking you're crazy, right? I'm like, what? I said, who did that? Who was pointing at me? Who said I'm crazy? He said, I won't tell you because I don't want to hurt you. Oh, thanks, Dad. How thoughtful, right? But then, he went on to give me this insightful lesson. He said, you do not have to be the center of attention everywhere you go. Nobody likes it. And the world will reject you if you continue this way. Class dismissed, lesson absorbed, and just like that, I learned that being seen is dangerous, that I can't trust my own perception, and how others view me will tell me who I am, not how I perceive myself. That confidence, my confidence, will turn people against me, and if I take up space, I will be rejected. So what did I do? I applied immediately. I started second-guessing myself, became fixated on how I was perceived. Did everyone really think I was crazy? That was a lot. That was a lot to even think about. But I held myself back and made myself smaller, and I started performing in a way that I thought would keep me safe. My experience wasn't unique, though. How many of us have been told, directly or indirectly, that we were too much? How many of us have felt the pressure to shrink ourselves so that we could fit in? After working with so many women, primarily children of narcissistic parents, but a lot of them women, I realized that this belief was not just mine. And not always from fathers, and not always in the same words, sometimes from mothers, teachers, culture, religion. But it must always boils down to one thing: how we were raised. And it makes you wonder, why? Because there's a deeper systemic issue at play in how we raise our children and our girls and our boys in patriarchal societies. An issue rooted in deeply ingrained misogyny. Yep. I realized that my own upbringing wasn't random. I was just trained how to be a good woman, one that doesn't trigger insecure men and their fragile egos, one that doesn't feel confident enough to take up too much space, one that is riddled with shame for who she is. I was trained to filter who I was based on what I believed the world wanted from me. And when I say the world, I mean a patriarchal society that expects women to fit into specific roles so that they can be accepted and, of course, chosen. I cannot begin to tell you the amounts of times I heard the phrase like, no man is ever going to want you if you, whatever. One time I was on the school bus and I jumped off the window because everybody was like taking ages to get out of the window. I was young, right? And I just jumped off the window. I didn't care. And the bus driver was a woman. And she said to me, you're acting like a boy. How disgusting. How are men going to want you when you do that? Relax, lady. I just wanted to get out of your stupid bus and get into my house. Relax. But anyway, I felt so ashamed after that, though, right? It's like, okay, I just want to get home. I didn't think it wasn't allowed to jump off the window. Maybe it wasn't. It was a part. I just needed to get out of there. Anyway, I was expected to become a puppet of a larger system that wants women small. And although I didn't do it in a way that would satisfy my father, because I never got to get upgraded to a golden child, I was still, and I will forever be the scapegoat, I unfortunately internalized it. I toned down the volume, hid behind self-imposed insecurities, and held up his projections as the truth of who I was. And we're all raised under the same structures that uphold that system that oppresses us. And although patriarchy affects both men and women are the ones that are oppressed, bullied, and stripped out of their worth entirely. Why this war against women, you would ask? Well, my guess is women have always been seen as threats. Because who is stronger than a person who births another person? Who is stronger than a body that takes a tiny seed and turns it into an entire human? Who is stronger than a creature that opens up and gives life and then closes up again and then gets up and walks? Can you imagine the face of the first man who witnessed a woman giving birth? He probably went over to the rest of the world in shock, in awe, and most importantly, in fear. The patriarchal wound, my theory, is that first narcissistic wound, the realization that men can never hold that power. Men realize that women create life and that women are life. And that made them feel powerless, because every man at birth, and since birth, knows what it's like to be completely at the mercy of a woman, because every man has come from the body of a woman. So what did patriarchy do? It reversed everything and just flipped it. They took our power, our ability to create, to exist between life and death, and they attributed it to their God. Of course, God had to be a man, right? They ripped it away from us until they stripped us from our power completely. And on top of all of that, they reduced us to a very thing they feared about us. They took the thing that we do, that they found most threatening, our ability to give life, and made it into the only thing that we're allowed to do. Birth givers, property, a means to an end, something to be chosen by them. We were taught that our only choice is to mold ourselves into something good enough to be picked by men. A species that felt inferior to us made it so that the roles would be reversed. Not by the laws of nature that they felt betrayed by, but by their own laws, the ones they built using our strengths against us. I have yet to believe anything more than I believe what I'm about to tell you, that nothing infuriates an insecure man more than a confident woman who stands in her power. Because men measure up power differently. And he will feel powerless against a woman like that. He'll say, can I control you? Can I scare you? Can I silence you? That's how they define strength. And if they can break you, they're above you. If you refuse to break, you become a threat, or a lady with cats, or unwanted, or too old. So what happens? They took away our rights, for example, of being safe. And they sold it back to us like a privilege, just something we had to earn. If we were chosen, we would be safe. If we're good, obedient, patient, kind, sacrificing, soft, nurturing, we would be protected. And what happens if we reject those roles? Well, they will reject us, or we suddenly become the abusers and they are our victims. And then they go on and have an entire loneliness epidemic that we are responsible for. Confident women are dangerous to a system that thrives on obedience. Because if we don't fear rejection, we are unstoppable. And the less we question ourselves, the harder we are to control. But they train us to police ourselves early on, to shrink before they even ask us to filter our own power before we even try to use it, to ask permission for our voice to be heard, check for feedback on how well we are received, so that we know how to tone ourselves down and adjust to the preferred requirements. But my question to you is, are you still playing by these rules? Are you still filtering yourself to be palatable for a system that wants you small? Or are you ready to shatter the conditioning and reclaim yourself? Because if you are, then you would have to own the very thing that you were told to never have. Confidence in your worth. Outside of male validation, outside of overgiving, outside of performing. This is a circus indeed, and we've all just been performing. We're like those sad little elephants that they tie them onto this little rope and they attach it on a chair, and when they're kids, when they're little babies, and then they grow into however many thousands and thousands of pounds, but they still think they can't get out and drag the chair and everybody along. We have never learned our own power. And it's not about what we do, right? It's also how we see ourselves. We have internalized our own oppression. That little chair became something that we've internalized, and now we are the ones stopping ourselves. We judge ourselves by the standards designed to keep us small. So how do we win this rigged game? We stop playing. For years, women pursued their worth through being chosen, being less, being what men wanted them to be. The trends on our body types can just give you a small understanding of that. Our figures into trends, and us modifying to fit them. We win this rigged game by realizing our worth, which will then build up our confidence. I was scrolling through TikTok today, as one does, for longer than I should, as one usually does, and I came across a clip of an interview of Lady Gaga. And the male reporter said to her, "The only thing missing from your life was love. And now you found it. Now you found the missing piece," or something like that. Imagine Lady Gaga, a superstar, a legend, right? No matter what you think about her per se, like she has undeniably had a huge music career, but she was incomplete, right? She was seen as incomplete until she had a man. Would they ever say that to a man? I don't think so. Because a woman without a man is missing something, but a man without a woman is just a man. And that's the game. We've been sold the idea that we're not whole, that we must be chosen to be complete, that nothing we achieve, no success, power of self or self-actualization can ever mean as much as being loved, chosen by a man. But that was never true. It took years and years of conditioning, but now the carriers of patriarchy are those who raise us, serving the system blindly by sacrificing us, our authenticity, our power, all in an exchange for safety through conformity. In retrospect, my father could just not fathom that I could go out in the world and be safe the way that I was. I was loud, I was confident, I was speaking up my mind without filtering. I was speaking up against injustice. I took up space, but that's something he didn't think was safe, nor had he ever seen it occur, right? So he was taught how women were supposed to be, and that's what he was, doing as a way of a deeper meaning of why they do what they do, besides his intense dislike for me. He was actually saying, you're not going to be safe being like that. That's not a woman's role. And as your father, I'm going to protect you. How? By breaking you down. Well, that aged nicely, didn't it? I emerged from my ashes and I doubled down on speaking up, actually. Kind of worked the other way around, So my invitation today is for you to tune in and think back into the moment where you first started to doubt your worth. What would you tell your younger self now? Write her a letter of encouragement, reminding her of her inherent value and potential. Give yourself the unconditional presence and empowerment you needed. Build yourself up. Build your friends up. Build your daughters up. Step in your own power unapologetically. Turn the fear into a superpower and the shame into a deep-rooted, unshakable sense of worth outside of anyone's validations or anyone's stamp of approval. Our childhood conditioning to playing small was so damn effective because it doubled down on the two driving forces of the human psyche, fear and shame. But women can set themselves free by embracing what they try to steal from us, our worth and our confidence. Something we can reclaim without having to overpower, oppress, or gaslight anyone into submission, unlike men did. It's not even a gender thing, right? It's a human thing. Everybody deserves to exist and take up space, not because of who they are, but because they are. And I know it feels unsafe to show up confident in a world that tells you that being confident is being a bitch, or too much, or it's obnoxious. But confidence isn't a risk. It's actually your biggest weapon. So use it today and every day. I'll see you guys soon.